start?
Yeah.
Well, welcome everyone.
Yeah.
It's lovely to see you and lovely to have so many of you from so many different places with us today.
Yeah.
Yeah. Glad you can make the journeys.
Yeah. Next time we come to Europe, it might be in a place closer to where you live.
We'll see.
We'll see.
We've got plans.
We've got plans.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it on Sunday.
On your way in, you might have seen that there's some posters up that we've prepared about God's Way, the projects that are going on. If you haven't seen them, you can see them as you're going out. They'll be on your left. And there's some information about the wipes, Down Under Wipes project, the No More Toilet Paper project, which is a follow-up from last year where we talked all about toilet paper so much, didn't we? But since then, we've started a new project in God's Way using all used materials, so recycled materials, to use wipes after you use your bidet. There's wipes you can use. So if you would like to touch and feel them, we'll put them back out on the display table in the breaks. They're very nice, and I find them multi-purpose. You can use them for lots of things, not just your bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that's been a fun project, and there's information out there if you want to make your own at home. God's Way is sharing the pattern, and there's been a lot of prototyping that's gone on with these wipes. And also there's the option to donate to receive some from God's Way as well. So, but there's information about all of that outside.
Lovely.
Lovely.
We bought 100 of them.
We did. Yeah. We did. We were the first customers, the first donors to the project.
Yeah.
Now, also on your way in, hopefully you received a gift of some books, and that's a gift from Jesus and I, which has been funded by donations from people in Australia and here overseas. So they are 4 volumes of the Paget messages. These are special volumes to us because they're ordered in terms of theme.
Subject matter.
Subject matter. So volume 1 has got a lot of very powerful truths about the soul and God's nature and prayer, and we're going to focus on some of those themes with you this weekend. But we hope you enjoy reading them because we find them very engaging in that way, because you can stay on the theme and get engrossed in it. So, yeah, we hope you enjoy that.
We're going to refer to them quite a lot over the next 3 days. So, and there'll be some homework reading from them as well.
Should you wish to do that.
Should you wish to do that as well and participate tomorrow in particular. But also we will be occasionally referring to different messages when we present some material, just so that you can sort of relate what we're presenting to the material that you're reading. So we'll do that as well.
Now, I think we should just get started. Is there any other announcements we need to make?
Does everyone know where the restrooms are, the toilets and
Hopefully when you...
the WCs?
Yes. And the other thing is we can't eat or drink in this room. You can drink water, but nothing, no other things. So we'll have a lunch break in a couple of hours, and there's the cafeteria out there, as well as there's a nice sort of garden area out to the side of this auditorium that we can use to have our lunch.
Yeah.
But if we can respect that, that's just about keeping the venue nice and clean and tidy.
Yeah. You can understand why they want to do that, because it's such a lovely venue, isn't it? Yeah. Nice, comfortable padding for your bottoms. Don't go to sleep because of it. We had very hard bottoms last 2 weeks ago in England. So we've just come from England, and we arrived here about 7 or 8 days ago, but we had to move homes because our first home was full of mould and mildew and quite smelly, and as a result, Mary and I got quite unwell because of it, so we had to move. And so we've moved once already since we've been here. And we're still in a bit of a recovery zone, actually, Mary and I, from the experience. So I'm just going to have a cough because of it. I'll just do that. So you'll find us occasionally stopping to have a cough and a sputter and a drink and things like that. Because we're just on the recovery mode, aren't we, really? Yeah. And we've had a lot of attack since we've been in Europe, and our hearts go out to you guys trying to listen to divine truth while you're under this kind of attack, because there's quite a lot of attack. In Australia, spirits, aside from spirits who come and attack Mary and I personally because of what we do, there's not a general sort of organised attack against what we do, because everyone's sort of more laissez-faire. They don't care really about what we do. Here it seems quite different actually, and so we have a lot of spirit attack while we're coming to Europe, like we did last time too when we arrived in Belgium. So we've had a very similar experience this year when we arrived here in Europe to the experience we had last year when we arrived as well. So there's a definite sort of attempt to stop divine truth being shared in Europe by spirits who are involved in that process. Of course, there's also a definite attempt from our spirit friends in the celestial heavens to do the opposite, to make sure it is shared. So, and that's what we know many of you enjoy these visits, so that's why we tried to organise this one. And we've come to this particular region because it just interests us, to be honest. It's a lovely area of Portugal, and also we feel that it has potential for the future, this kind of area in Portugal. But of course that depends a lot upon a number of different factors, particularly upon the people who are here and many of you actually too. So that's one reason why we came here, because we wanted to just see what it was like in the northeastern part of Portugal. And Mary and I, we're hopeful of getting a little bit of a trip across sort of to Spain in this region here too, just to check the area out a little bit in terms of noting some notes for what we'd like to see in the future happen in this region. But in the next few years, we may come back here or we may not. We're still deciding where we're going to go. But at this stage, we're looking in 2026 and 2027. We'll discuss some things on Sunday with you about that, what plans we have. But we're hopeful of coming back into Europe again next year. So, and we're thinking at this stage that it will probably be Germany, France, and here. But we're still in the planning of all that, aren't we? Yeah. So that's why we're here. We thought we'd give it a stab and just get the feel of the place. Is the idea, and we also did have a bit of a struggle to find venues who would have us, and also venues that were suitable. And quite a number of the venues that were suitable turned out to be like this, where there's sort of like an auditorium with a tiered seating. And that's meant that we've had to make adjustments to all of our equipment so that we can allow for multi-leveled recording and things like that. So you'll see up the back, if you turn your heads around, you'll see there's 3 cameras up the back. Those 3 cameras on the stem, they are aimed at Mary and myself and the board, so we're hoping to provide videos of these events this year. And this camera here is facing towards the audience, but it's only, as I said, in that area right there, in the middle triangle. So if you want to ask questions, that's the area you'll be needing to see if you want to do that.
Could we just take a moment also to thank Nellie? Nellie and Dennis actually helped to find this venue.
Yeah. There's also been quite a lot of things going on behind the scenes to get us organised and things like that. So we'd like to thank all of those people. And there's
Rui is here, has been helping us.
Rui's been helping us a lot. I've sent a whole heap of equipment to Rui. We've had all sorts of we've also had Tim and Simone. They brought your messages from England. The books. we had to order them in England and then somehow get them here. And so it was a van full, the books weigh about 400 kilograms or thereabouts, so we needed somebody with a van. And so those guys brought them in a van all the way from England.
What you've got in your head by
weight?
By 100 is what they had to bring.
Yeah, that's right. So that was good that we had that option. It was very hard us getting copies here to Portugal in terms of import. Import in Portugal we've found is very hard. And there are a lot of fees, and they ask you for fees on almost everything you do, and it's quite. We've had all sorts of issues trying to just get the basic of equipment here. So some of the equipment has been brought by people. One of those persons is Nicholas. Thank you. Where is Nicholas? There he is. Thank you, Nicholas. He brought some gear from us from Australia via France to here. It was the only way we could sort of get it here. And then Rui has been, when we arrived in Portugal, we met up with Rui and he offloaded all the stuff we'd sent here beforehand. So there's a whole heap of equipment that we sent here beforehand.
Yeah, and Pierre also did some
And Pierre brought down the whiteboard for us. Yeah. Thank you, mate.
Yeah. That Jesus has put an enormous amount of logistical arrangements to get equipment into each country that we're going to this year.
Yeah.
Because we're videoing this year, you'll see there's new camera stands and mounts and things that we can't travel with. We're travelling with all the video and audio, the key equipment, but stands and speakers and mounts and all toolkits, they've all had to be shipped individually to all these different countries and managed. So Jesus, and figured out initially what we need where.
5 different locations.
Cables and land cables and.
So there's actually a cable going from this camera all the way along the auditorium, all the way up the side there. You can see it poking out a little bit in the corner. And right across to those cameras up there. So I had to buy a long enough cable for the auditoriums we were going to use and things like that. And we also had to find a way to reel it so that it wasn't really unwieldy to do with. So there were all sorts of logistical difficulties.
It was quite the feat.
Yeah. It's taken us 6 solid months, to be honest, to organise there's 5 events we planned, 4 that we'll be doing on this trip. So, and that's enabled us to be able to bring. We condensed what we had in 2 bags last trip of audio. Now we've got 1 bag of audio and 1 bag of video. We travel with wherever we go. There's nearly 1,000 bits of equipment that we travel with that condense into those 2 bags. Or really it's 4 bags plus a bit. And we have to have an equipment passport for all of those now as well.
Yeah, so it's good to get it all underway though. There's a system in place now. We know a lot of things, so hopefully it's repeatable in future years with much less effort. Yeah.
We've tried to do that because we're sort of hoping that it will be something we can replicate every year or so in each continent, and even if we might not be able to do it per continent every year, at least every second year is what we're aiming for. But that means that there has to be equipment in each location, and so we're actually looking at things like maybe even getting a van or something, because to get to different places in Europe, it's once we're here with all the equipment, it's really good if we can just drive around from place to place, and
that would be fun.
Yeah, so we're thinking of doing that. So we're even considering looking at buying a second-hand van and a few other things like that at this stage to enable these events to continue to happen in the future. So that's our plans. Briefly, we'll talk more about that on Sunday though. The main reason why we wanted to get together with you is to talk about the most important subject on earth today, is what we really want to talk to you about. And so that's will be our focus over the next 2 days in particular. We also will probably do a bit of channeling with some spirits as well that we'd like to talk to while we're here. So you'll probably see a bit of that happening tomorrow as well. Yeah. That's our plans. Okay.
Okay, take it away.
Let's get started. The thing I would probably like to start with is I'd like to start with the most important personage in the universe, really, and that's God. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about God's character and God's nature and the difference between God and humans. There are ideas on earth that say we are all a part of God, and that's a very common view, even amongst many religions, that we're all that God's essence or a part of God is within us. And what I'd like to do first is discuss these matters from a point of truth with you, so that we can introduce the subject that we've been that we'll be talking to everybody about while we're travelling, which is about prayer. So the main topic is still going to be pray for God's love. So that's the main topic of this discussion. But before we talk about that, I would like to talk about the relationship that God has with humans and what God designed, the truth of the design. So if we can think of God, so I'll put God over here as a soul with masculine and feminine qualities, which we've discussed with many of you before. So God has attributes, you could say characteristics, and it's very important to grasp what those characteristics are and how much they are different to many of our characteristics as humans. And the reason why it's important to understand the difference is if you think you're already a part of God, then your desire to receive a part of God is going to be flawed. It's going to be influenced by the fact that you already believe yourself to be a part of God. But if you understand that God is a different entity and also has different characteristics to humans, in the sense that humans are very limited, so obviously one of the first things is that God is infinite. And this is a huge thing to come to understand as a human, to understand that God is infinite. That means that God has infinite qualities of every type. So infinite power, infinite wisdom, infinite knowledge, infinite love, infinite kindness, infinite compassion, infinite mercy. God has all of these things to an infinite degree. So every one of God's qualities or attributes has an infinite nature to it. It's a part of so every single individual quality, which is a part of the whole of God's soul, each individual quality is infinite in its nature. Not just God himself, but also every quality and expression God has is infinite in its nature. Right? And it's very important to understand that as a human, that we are like ants in comparison to this infinite being. And yet, this infinite being is offering to share with us things from God, from its nature. So God is offering to share with us parts of God's nature. And if you understand, if you sort of can grasp that we're, on one hand, we're sort of like this minuscule part of God's creation as an individual, and yet also the greatest of the creations, in the sense that we're the only one that can, by choice, receive a part of God's nature, then you begin to understand our relationship with the Creator. Right? So God, being an infinite being, has infinite qualities, whereas humans, so let's talk about our soul, So remember, our soul, which is one complete unit, which also has masculine and feminine qualities, our soul, for the most part, we are seeing ourselves not like that, like a whole soul, but for the most part, most people see themselves as halves, where you have your two bodies, right? So, feminine body connected to the dominantly feminine part of the soul. If the part of the soul is dominantly feminine, then of course the bodies will be feminine body being used. If the part of the soul is dominantly masculine, then it'll be a masculine body that is used. Two of them are created at conception. We've talked about this before for those of you who've come before. So we've got our physical body and our spirit body. Our physical body being the body we live in right now, but our spirit body is concurrently existing and concurrently having experience at the same time, and that is also a part of what we are carrying around with us right now, and that is connected to the half of the soul. So we've got our half of the soul, and of course not every soul looks like this, because you can have like both halves dominantly feminine or both halves dominantly masculine, right? So if both halves were dominantly masculine, then obviously the two halves would be masculine bodies as well, right? If both halves are dominantly feminine, then the two halves would be both female bodies, right? For 90% of the souls, there's an even balance between masculine and feminine. And in those cases, you get this arrangement. Now, this has been created in the image of this. So we have been created in the image of God, in that God is a soul, and his creation of us is soul. We are soul. The bodies are just appendages to the soul. You could call them an attribute of the soul, an attachment to the soul. And those bodies are used or utilised only under certain circumstances. So in the physical world, obviously we're using the physical body. But in the spirit world, and also when you go to sleep, you're using the spirit body. When you die, the cord that connects those two bodies together breaks. So there's a cord, and we've talked about this before. It breaks, and in the process of breaking, you end up with the physical body dying because no more energy can be supplied to it from the soul. It dies, and now your dominant body you're using is your spirit body. But all of that is not infinite. It hasn't got the capacity to be infinite. God's soul is infinite. So I'll put that above. God's soul, infinite. All right, God's soul is infinite. This one is finite. In its natural state, it's been created with limitations. You have a limited intellect. You have a limited understanding, a limited knowledge, limited love, limited kindness, limited compassion. Limited not just in your sinful state, but even in your perfect state, you are limited. In a completely perfect state as a human, you will remain limited. And when I say perfect, I mean perfect without any part of God having entered you. Right? You will remain limited. So the biggest issue or point of contention that spirits have when they're thinking about the makeup of the human soul is they're still concerned about the limits. So even in the sixth sphere of the spirit world, there's a lot of spirits talking about the limits that they have, the limitations of understanding, of knowledge, of compassion, of love, of influence, the limits they have of all those things are quite high. Even though they're perfect, the perfect being has been created and designed with those limits, and those limits are a part of the human, you could call it the human design. Now, even though there's limits, the design was perfect. So don't confuse perfection or imperfection with limits. When you have limits, you can be perfect in those limits, can't you? If you think about if you designed a vehicle, it has limits. So let's say a vehicle with wheels probably has the limit of driving on a road. Right? As long as you use the vehicle for the purpose of driving on a road, you probably never exceed its limit and it will last a long time. As soon as you try to drive in the air, fly off a road, you will encounter major difficulties. The vehicle will crash, as we call it, and be potentially destroyed because you've exceeded its design limit. In God's universe, humans can't exceed their design limit. It's impossible to exceed your design limit without there being some kind of external influence upon you. So, we have been designed with these limitations. Now, in the books you've been given, the Paget messages, just put a marker, if you can get the first volume out, volume number 1. I'm just going to blow my nose.
So volume 1, page 110 it is. Message from Jesus. Why the divine love of God is necessary for man to... Oh, you're still on, Jake. You've got to mute yourself now.
Sorry about that. I thought I muted myself.
Why the divine love of God is necessary for man to possess, in order that he may become at one with the Father and an inhabitant of the celestial kingdom. So in that message, there's a lot about these changing from the finite to the infinite.
And there's a lot about understanding that we as humans have been designed with limits. Does that make sense? So I'd really like you to, tonight, put that down as something to read, that message. Yep. Okay, so we've got the infinite God with infinite qualities who created this finite being. Man. Sorry, I'm just... who created this finite being. You know you're finite, right? In your day-to-day life, you experience it all the time, don't you? Sometimes you wish you had more energy, but you don't. Sometimes you wish you had more love, and you don't. Sometimes you wish you could have more anger, and you don't. You know, there's a limit to every expression you have emotionally. We are full of limitations by design, even though we're the pinnacle of God's creation. There is a limit to our emotions, there's a limit to our intellect, there's a limit to our knowledge, there's a limit to our understanding. There's limits everywhere. And truly appreciating, firstly, that you're a limited being is a very important thing, because it helps you be modest. Do you know what I mean by modest? What I mean by that is that you understand your own limitations and you don't try to exceed them. That's the point of modesty. An example of that is, you know that your body is not capable of high impacts. In other words, if you could be hit by a car driving at 100 kilometres an hour, you know that if you have no protection at all, in that situation you are probably going to die. your physical body has been created with a limit, right? Your spirit body has also been created with limits. There are limits to what it can do. The limits exceed the limits of the spirit body. For example, if a spirit body got hit by a 100-kilometre-hour driving car, the car would go straight through the body. So it doesn't have the same limit as the physical body does, and that's why your spirit body doesn't die when you get hit by a car. It remains because it doesn't have the same limits. But it does have limits. And those limits exceed the limits of the physical body, but they are still limits. And then your half of a soul has limits as to what it can do. And even the soul in a combined state, in a union state, has limits as to what it can do. And all of those limits have been placed upon you so you understand how far you can go with your free will and where the limit of your free will stops. Does that make sense to everyone? Does anyone have any questions about that? About those limits? So we're good? Boris, you want to ask? Microphone, if we leave your hand up. So
the question is, as you progress, your soul progression, your physical body also increases its potential for limits?
Only slightly. The more you progress on earth in your soul, your physical body is still bound by the same physical body limits. So in other words, if somebody hit you with a car driving 100 miles an hour, or 100 kilometres an hour, 100 miles an hour for you, isn't it, USA? Of course, your physical body won't be able to withstand that limit, no matter how well developed you are. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how developed you are, you will not survive that, most likely. Make sense? If somebody cuts your head off, right? No matter what your development, you're going to die. Does that make sense? And there's no way of putting it back on. It is just way too complicated. Well, firstly, you'd have to have someone there to put it on, wouldn't you? But assuming that's all possible, there's no way to put it back on. There's too much information connected with the nervous system and all of the other things that connect on the cord. And the cord itself actually physically gets snapped, the physical cord. The one that I drew between the physical body and the spirit one gets snapped whenever your spinal column gets cut. So basically, you're dead. That's your limit. You've exceeded the limit of your physical body, no matter how developed you are.
Yeah. And in regards to like growing back teeth or limbs or...
Well, yeah, many of those things are possible, but only under certain conditions. So yes, the limits that we're currently experiencing in our physical body are not the actual limits.
Yeah.
Do you understand?
Yeah.
But many of us think they are, and so we live within extra limits that have not been imposed by God, but rather have been imposed by our own beliefs. You understand? But I'm talking about the perfected human also has limits. And no matter how perfect you become, in terms of how close to perfection of the perfect human you become, you will eventually hit those limits. So in the spirit world, in the sixth sphere of the spirit world, every single human there has hit the limit of how far they can develop. Right? It exceeds what we're capable of doing here on earth, but it's still a limit.
Makes sense, thank you.
Yep. So don't think, though, that you will somehow in your physical body be without limit altogether, like some kind of sci-fi movie. It's not like that at all. Your body will always have its limits. Yep. Another limit of your physical body is that you have to breathe. You need oxygen. right? That's a limit. Now, how much oxygen you need, well, that's debatable based upon condition. You can regulate your physiological functions based on condition and need a lot less oxygen than the average person would need to survive. But you still need it. There's a limit. Yep. Very important to understand that every part of you, your physical body, your spirit body, and your soul has limits. That's a part of being human. Even a perfected human has limits. Yeah. Anyone else? And down here on this side. And on this side.
Yeah, I don't know if this is a strange question.
That must be off. Let me just check. Yeah, that's
I don't know if this is a kind of strange question, but I was wondering, what's the purpose of all these limitations on Earth? Is it like for education, or is it from God's perspective?
good question, yeah. It's about your education. If you were given the same capacity you have in the spirit world while you're on earth, you would struggle to understand the differences between how to utilise every capacity you have. You need to learn how to grow into your capacities. So if you just imagine yourself as a child and you're crawling. Now, a child who's like 9 months old, or let's say 6 months old, if it could walk, it would do all sorts of damage to its own spinal column and its own muscular development. So it must firstly, for the development of its muscular system and its spinal system, it must learn first to crawl before it can walk. So you know that when you're a child, you have to crawl first, right? You're crawling and you're developing muscles all the way through different parts of your muscles that you haven't had developed before. And the act of crawling causes your muscles, doesn't it, to develop.
It does a lot more than that too. It's your joints as well as your
joints,
brain.
And also the synapses in your brain start firing to control your muscular system, because as a child, as you know, with a really young baby, its sort of arms just all flop all over the place, don't they? And they've really got no muscular control. Imagine if a baby just born was all of a sudden expected to walk. It'd have all sorts of issues and problems because it hasn't developed yet in order to have that capacity. So what we need to do, or what God did, was design a system where we grow into our capacity through process. And this process helps us sensorially, but it also helps us with our muscular development, our sensory development, our nervous system development, our internal organs develop differently. And all of those things must occur in order for us to eventually be able to be an adult standing up, walking, able to communicate and so forth. All of these different forms of development must occur. Now, if that didn't happen, you could see, even though you might have the capacity to do a lot more, you wouldn't know how to do it. And also, you could potentially damage the process of development to the point where, you know, you're trying to walk before you've crawled, and so all of those systems haven't been developed yet. And in the process of them not developing, you don't know the art of controlling your body. So these things had to occur as part of your design. It's a very clever design, actually, because it's an educational design where you grow in your own education abilities, your educational abilities.
And if you think about when you're first born, you're not even aware of self in any sense. And if you watch a small baby, they gradually become aware of their physical self and then aware of the capacities of that physical self. And all of that is about God's process of us coming to understand I'm an individual, different from others, and I have a will that controls firstly even just this physical body, and there's action and reaction cause and effect, even just based on how I use my physical body. And then if you think about the way you move through your life, then as you mature, you come to understand that, oh, it's not just my physical actions, but it's also my words. Now I start to talk. My words are a part of the expression of my will. And we come to feel that our emotion exists and that it's separate from somebody else's. And all of these are very important parts of our development that prepare us for understanding the even greater and greater capacities of our will. So in a way, the limitations are there to help us to gradually work into this process of knowledge and understanding of our free will and ourselves as separate entities, if you like, which eventually we come to realise, well, we're one half of a whole entity. And then we come to realise, well, we're also, and what we're going to talk about today, we're an entity separate from God that can relate to God. And all of these things, if you really examine our physical existence, and then as we move into our spirit existence, God has designed into that process some very beautiful ways that we can come to see, oh, my relationship to my human parent is and your relationship to your human child is also a way of us to open us emotionally and intellectually to the concept of a parent who loves us and a creator. And so the physical limitations are actually designed so that we go through this process gradually, which is very loving. God doesn't overwhelm us with everything all at once and then say, and you're responsible for everything that happens. In a way, the limitations help us to regulate our will and learn about love. It's a part of God's mercy. In our earth-based existence, the limits actually limit how much harm we can do, which is actually quite merciful as well. Yeah.
Imagine if you didn't have those limits, what kind of harm you would do without knowledge. Even to yourself. Yeah, it would be quite extreme. Many of us, don't realise that actually loving limits are a great way for somebody to learn the structure of a system. Yeah, and this is why, as parents, it's very important that you put loving limits on your own children for the same reason. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good.
Basic question, maybe too basic.
There's no such thing.
Is there a real limit of the physical body length and capability to have eternal life? And
well, the physical body was not designed for you to live forever.
And do we have any knowledge or information how long it can last?
Yes, historically the physical bodies lasted up to 969 years. That was the longest ever living person who ever lived. But everybody died. All the people historically have all died. But of course they had to be very, very close to physical and emotional perfection in order to live that length of time. For now, of course, our physical body is quite decayed in comparison to that, in the sense that a person who was 969 years old, Methuselah, you might know that name from the Bible. He has that reputation because he was the oldest person who ever lived. And you can talk to him as a spirit, and by the time he hit his 900s, he was sort of like a person in his 90s now, right? So he was feeling the limitations of old age. Yeah. When he was in his 800s, he was like a person in their 80s now. So you imagine that, you sort of go, how uncomfortable that might be, being in your 80s after being in your 30s. You think, well, there's a big difference between 80 and 30 in terms of what you can do. Imagine being in your 80s for 100 years. That would be a bit uncomfortable, wouldn't it? So it's not necessarily good. It's just, it took a long time for him to reach the age in which he passed. So it's presumed by spirits that, you know, you could live a bit longer than that if you had received God's love. And I think that's certainly the truth. But nobody on this earth has ever done it. So in the first century, I was at one with God and had a perfect body, but somebody else killed it. So, you know, at the end of the day, I only lasted 35 years, not thousands of years. And I didn't expect to last a long time. And also didn't really want to. Spirit world's better than here. Well, when I say better, once you've learnt the lessons of here, you want to move on and learn the lessons of there. You know, you don't feel like you're missing anything here anymore, because there is a wider scope of the spirit body, and therefore more you can do than what you could do here. So here, if I want to go from one end of the world to the other end of the world, if I don't know anything about the scientific principles of teleportation or other things like that, I must use a mechanical device such as an aeroplane to get there, which takes nearly 20 hours. It took us our flight from Australia to England on this trip. What a waste of time, sitting in an airplane for 20 hours. If you could get there like that, wouldn't you prefer that? Well, the spirit can. So you can see once you become a spirit and you like the idea, you can move around fast. Even on earth, you can move around fast. Just not everybody can see you, that's all, but you still can move around fast. You sort of like the idea of it. It's not like you're going to go back and go, oh, I'd rather go on a plane, when, you know, you could go there quickly just in your spirit body based upon your thoughts and feelings. So you can see that while there are physical limits on earth, once you become a spirit, you look back on your body that you had on earth and you sort of go, well, I don't know if I want to go back to it, because why would I want to? It's limited. It has more limits than the new body, the spirit body that I'm learning to use has. So why would you want to go back? You wouldn't want to, would you? So this whole concept that people have of like resurrection is an interesting concept, I find, because, you know, a lot of people think when I talked about the resurrection of the soul, which is a completely different subject, they now think that's about the resurrection of the body, and it's got nothing to do with it. And the reason why is that every person who becomes a spirit within a very short period of time, they don't want to come back here. There's too many limits that they've now grown beyond. Is that sense? So while you can potentially live on earth for a long period of time in your physical form, the question becomes, why would you want to? If you continue to grow, you probably wouldn't want to. And in fact, there's no spirit in the sixth sphere who wants to come back. There's even spirits in the sixth sphere who believe in reincarnation and they don't want it to be true, because they don't want to come back. Right? Even though they continue to believe in a belief that would say they have to come back, they don't want to come back and they never have. Right?
So that means if you have enough developed in love, that in some moment, if it's enough of this kind of life on the planet, we can somehow decide not to reconnect with our physical body.
Well, that many people who die already make that decision. So many people who die in their sleep, for example, have chosen just to not come back to their body, and that's why they die in their sleep. They're away from their body, they're experiencing other experiences, they don't really like their experience on earth anymore, and so they just choose to not come back to their body. And so they don't. And so they pass because of that reason. So many of us are very attached to our life on earth, aren't we? Like, you feel very like this is it. Like, you got to string it out for as long as possible, that kind of feeling. Like, I've got to stay here. If I can stay here till I'm 150, then I'll do it. You know, that kind of feeling. But once you truly have grown from a spiritual perspective and understand the potentials of the limits of each body, you start, by the time you're 150, you're going to be going, I think I'd prefer to be somewhere else using a younger body, without as many limits. Yeah. The main thing that keeps us to Earth, or bound to it, are the things of Earth. So an example of that is like if I pass, then the person I'm with, so Mary, will probably be thinking more of passing after them than before them. Or I, as a spirit, wish I could be back on Earth because I want to be with Mary still. I might have that thought. Of course I can be, but she doesn't know. She might not know. If she hasn't developed her senses, she might not know that I'm there. And so that could modify how I view it all. Does that make sense? That I could say, when I passed, I might not be happy because all the people I know are still on Earth. And this happens a lot when you're young. So when you're in your teenage years in particular, when you pass in your teenage years, a lot of people stay earth-bound for a long time because they're not happy about exploring their new life. They want to go back to their old one. But it's very important to understand, for the point of this discussion, that we have been designed with limits, and even each body has its own limits. Even each body has its limit to its design. And we are limited humans exploring this vast universe. It's amazing, beautiful universe, which we're exploring, but you will not be able to explore all of it in your physical body. I know they want to, go to Mars. I don't know why. Because it's not like I've been there. It's not a very nice place. It's inhospitable. The temperature ranges far exceed the physical body's ability to survive. Obviously, there's no oxygen either, which doesn't help very much. But no water, there's no plants, animals, birds, trees, green. All the things that bring you joy in this world, there's none of it there. You'd be living in a created capsule with lots more limits. Why would you want that? It doesn't make any sense to me. Like, a person in their spirit body can go and visit Mars, so wait till then if you want to visit Mars. Trust me, you'll visit it, like I have, and spend very little time there. Like I didn't spend very much time there. Mostly because it's, for the large part, just a rock and uninteresting. There's a few interesting facts about it that you can explore, but nowhere near the interesting facts you can explore in your spirit body with other things that you can see and explore. So why would you be limited to that? And you think about it, it's going to be potentially many millennia, and maybe also a physical impossibility for us even to move from light years away to other light years away in our physical form, because it would take a long time. Why would you even want to do that? You can do it in your spirit body whenever you want. So it doesn't seem to me to be much point doing it in your physical body with all these apparatus and all this restriction and the shells you've got to live in and the suits you've got to put on and you've got to wee in your own suit and things like that. It's just like, why? Why would you want to do that? You have to be bound only to the physical to want to do it. And once you understand that those limits are not there in your spirit form, you've got the ability to explore all of that at any time you wish. And many spirits do explore all of those things any time they wish. And so why would you want to then come back to a body that's limited? And it's very important to get the perception of this limit, I feel, because at the moment, many of us think, physical body, particularly when you're healthy, you feel like, I feel invincible almost, But you're not. and you've got limits. And to understand limits is a very important part, I feel, of understanding your initial relationship with God. Because here I am with my limits, he is a being without any. Right? Here I am, finite. He is a being infinite. Here I am with my limits. Here's the unlimited. Right? In order for me as a creature to anywhere approximate the unlimited, I need to receive something from outside of me in order to become more unlimited. This is a very fundamental, basic principle of your development. You will not be able to grow beyond your limits, your design limits, unless you receive something outside of you that is unlimited, unless you connect to a source that's higher than yourself. So when it comes to the expression of your love, for example, you will be limited. And you will not be any more loving than any other person in the sixth sphere unless you connect to a source of love that's higher than you. The same it goes with your knowledge. You're all limited with your knowledge. You will not have more knowledge than the person in the sixth sphere has obtained. You will not ever have more knowledge than that unless you connect to somebody who has an infinite number or amount of knowledge. Does that make sense? Yeah. It's very important to understand that fundamental principle. I have been designed with limits. Those limits do grow as we illustrated. You know, when you're a baby, they grow to become less limited when you're an adult. And then when you die, you're less limited again. That is also true. And in your spirit body, you learn how to use it, and so you become more unlimited by what you learn. And there's a feeling sometimes of, wow, I didn't even know all of these things were possible for me, but they're still limited. The limits far exceed what we have here on Earth, but they're still limits.
You mean they're far less than what we have on Earth? You said
yes.
Yeah. Sorry. That's all right. I just got confused for a moment. The limits are far less than what we have on Earth.
Well, yes, the limits we have on Earth exceed the limits we have in the spirit world. In other words, we're less limited in the spirit world, but we're still limited. Any other questions? Come on. Just keep your hand up.
So my question is about immortality. So
about immortality, yes.
So in the prayer for God's divine love,
yep.
There's a line that speaks to that when you receive God's love, you go from being mortal to immortal. What does that mean?
Yeah. So if you think of, I think we need to probably have a discussion about immortality as a separate discussion. In the last 2 years or so, we've had a lot of fireside chats with people in Australia, and one of the chats we had was a 6-hour discussion about immortality, which we haven't unfortunately been able to edit to get up, so you won't be able to hear it until we find somebody to edit it. But and there will be future discussions about immortality. But the fundamental principle is this: you cannot become immortal unless you receive something that's beyond your limits. Now, God's love being an infinite part of God, once you receive it, can you see, you now, in order for you to die, your soul to die, you would have to also destroy a part of God's love, which is not possible. So in that regard, you become immortal. You're unable to be destroyed even by God. Before that time, and there's messages that talk about this in the Paget messages, before that time, God could decide, Gomo, you've finished the purpose for which I've created you, so now you no longer exist. God could decide that, right? Because you're a created being, and with its limits. And God could decide, well, you've now met all the criteria of, what I wanted you to experience, enjoy. You might have lived by that stage hundreds of thousands of years or millions of years, and by that stage you may be tired of living because you're tired of living at your limit. Does that make sense? There's a lot of philosophy on earth that talks about immortality and says, imagine if you were immortal but you couldn't have any more than the standard human experience. So imagine that for a moment, that you could live forever, but you can only have the standard human experience. That have to be on earth, and you can only experience the things on earth. Can you see, after some time, you'd probably get bored of it, wouldn't you? You'd become quite probably distraught, actually. Thinking, well, I can't go beyond this experience, but everything that I've done. And I've done it hundreds of times in hundreds of different ways, and now I've exhausted all the potentialities of what I can do. What do I do now? And if that was your only existence, can you imagine, after a while, that would play on you, wouldn't it? Like psychologically play on you, where you'd go, I'm just bored now. What do I do now? I've experienced everything. I've had 100 children, so I know what having a child is like. I've had, by that stage you might have had 1,000 children. And then that's, do we want to do that again? I'm bored with that. Some of you feel bored with that after one, but anyway. But imagine, and then you go, right, I've had relationships, but they're all the same. It's like they're all limited by the same limits. They're all limited with the amount of love that I have for the person and the amount of love I receive from them. That's all limited. My knowledge is limited because I can't learn anything beyond, out in the universe. I might seek for it, but there's a limit to what I will understand as well because of the limits that are being placed on the human intellect. That you'll hit a limit there too. So what do? After a while, can you see, you'd be very, almost distraught with your boredom. Yeah. So of course God created the spirit world where there's less limits so that you can go there now and experience all of that. But of course at some point in your future there you might end up in the same position where there's a limit to everything you do, and what do you do then? There's a whole heap of things you can never understand. There's a whole heap of things you'll never be able to fully appreciate because there's a limit to your intellect to even understand it. And there's a limit to your emotional capacity to experience, so that everything will feel like unfulfilling after a while. And this is how many spirits we've met in the sixth sphere feel. They feel unfulfilled. Even though they have a far better life than you can imagine here on earth, they still feel unfulfilled. The only way to get from that limited state to the unlimited state is to receive a part of the infinite. Immortality is the process of receiving a part of the infinite. Right? Once we receive a part of the infinite, now we have this beautiful, unlimited scope of our development. We can receive more and more of the infinite, and therefore the finite limitations with which we've been designed no longer apply. We've now been transformed from a normal person, a human, to, you could say, a divine person, a divine human, a person now who has a more tendency towards the unlimited, towards the infinite. And a part of that is by receiving a substance from God, God's love, you have the ability now to enter this state where nothing, there is nothing that will be done to you or can be done to you that will destroy your soul's life. You're immortal. Okay. Yeah. And because you're always receiving more of the infinite, your capacity to understand and grow and change and think and feel all grows. So now you're not limited by your emotional expression anymore. You know that all you need to do is receive more of the infinite and your emotional expression will grow. And you know that if you receive more of the infinite, your intellect will grow. Your ability to understand will grow. Your ability to do things will grow. And this is the difference between receiving God's love and not receiving it.
Thank you.
Tim?
So if we receive God's love one time, say we ask for it and we receive it, does that mean it's inevitable that we become immortal then?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. How long it takes will depend upon your desire to receive more. But now, when God's love is in your soul, it's impossible that it can be erased from it. Right? So yes, it is guaranteed at some point in your future. How long that takes, I've seen many take 2,000 years. So it might take a while. But how long it takes will depend upon your desire. Your sincere desire, your longing. And we need to talk about sincere longing, don't we? Because that's a part of praying for God's love. But what I'm trying to do first is set the scene. Do you understand the importance of God's love to you? Yeah. Most of us haven't given a lot of thought of how important it is to our future. Here on earth, the average person just thinks, next week, next month. We struggle to even think about next year, really, don't we, for many of us? Who knows what's going to happen next year? 5 years, and most of us are, well, that's a long way away, might be dead by then. So most of us don't even think that far ahead. But a person who truly appreciates the difference between their finite self and God, the infinite being, will have a lot longer term future outlook than that. And the primary driving force for your future won't be what you can physically achieve, won't be what you can physically do, it won't be what you can physically build or create or any of those things. It'll be your relationship with God, knowing that that is the thing that's going to bring the infinite to you. Yeah. This is a part of the benefit of the relationship with God. Is bringing the infinite being God is to you. Yeah. It's an amazing opportunity when you think about it, isn't it? Because before this opportunity, men and women on earth lived for tens of thousands of years in a limited state. And unfortunately, because of sin, not just the limited perfect state, they ended up in a more and more and more limited state because of sin as well. Right? So we ended up with not just the perfect imposed limits, but now self-imposed limits because of our sin also got imposed. And so most of us now have little concept about how limited we are as beings, right? And when you talk to a sixth-sphere spirit, of course he has a concept of how unlimited a sixth-sphere spirit can be, but he also knows, after time, he also comes to see that he has limits. And limits is what creates boredom. You understand? With the limits, you're going to become bored with your life. That's a natural consequence of limits. Is that eventually you get to the point where you go, I want there to be something more. What more can I experience? And this desire for the something more is something that is going to help you connect to God potentially. Because the only thing that is more than the perfect human is the infinite being that exists, that is our creator beyond that. Where do you want to go next? You go.
And down here.
Yeah, so, and down here. So, if we start with Henry first, sorry.
It's similar to your question, but
Yeah.
do I understand then that if a person once received God's love, that person is no longer mortal?
They're no longer mortal. No, they now have a part of immortality in them, and therefore they themselves become immortal. Now, your consciousness of your immortality doesn't happen at the first time you receive God's love. Right? And what I mean by that is that you grow into it. Just like, so the more of God's love you receive to the point where you become at one with Him, now you are not only growing towards immortality or having a part of immortality in you, but now you know you are. There's a difference between feeling you are and intellectually thinking you are. Do you understand? If you think of it from a philosophical perspective, thinking, once I've received God's love, I have a part of immortality in me, right? Because God's immortal. Therefore, God's love being infinite means that I have a part of the infinite in me. But unfortunately, at that point, I still not grown to use it or understand it, or I don't know the extremity of it, how big it can get. I'm still stuck with my own concepts of the limitations I'm under. And so I don't yet feel that I'm immortal. Once you become at one with God, there's a change that happens. And this change occurs where you know you're immortal. Once you know you're immortal, can you see fear also goes completely? You no longer live by fear anymore. So the change between the two different states is the level of fear you're in. So what happens is the more of God's love you receive, the more the fear dissipates. Until the point where the fear is zero, there is no fear in you anymore. Right? At that point, which is also the point when you become at one with God, at that point you're conscious that you can feel your immortality. It's not just a philosophical concept anymore to you, it's reality. Makes sense?
If I receive God's love,
So just be closer with the mic.
if I receive God's love, I might not feel immortal, but I would be.
You will be immortal from that point, but you won't be conscious of it until you become at one with God and all of the fear has gone. And this is why a person who's growing in God's love needs to learn how to get rid of fear. You need to learn how to release it from you to the point where you have none. Once you get to the point where you have none, now, as you receive more God's love and you become at one with God, you also have no fear at the same time. That transition of between the seventh and the eighth sphere is the transition of releasing all of your fears, and you have none left, ever. There's no sin left, because all of your sin is caused by fear. Right? There's no sin left, no fear left. You're now at one with God, conscious of the fact that there's nothing that can be done to you to harm you.
So receiving God's love once is huge.
Yes, just once. You know, if Mary and I, one of our desires is to have everybody on the planet receive God's love once. Yeah, just once. Of course, a person who receives it just once doesn't feel the benefit of immortality yet. You know, it's better if you can become at one with God, because then you feel that and you know, you know. And it's a very different space or state than just intellectually understanding the truth of it, because now you feel it with all of your heart, your emotion is all there. Yeah, but that's, yes, just once is enough to get you on the road to immortality. Just once. Great, eh?
Thank you.
Isn't that fantastic?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's good news.
Yeah.
Is it possible to receive God's love and not be conscious of it? And it's something that it has been, but you weren't aware at the time.
Well, it depends how you define conscious. And this is something that we also need to discuss. So let's sort of look at what it means to be conscious. your physical body, as we pointed out, we also pointed out this in England, your physical body has a brain. But that's not actually your mind. Your brain, the functionality of your brain is to communicate with this body using the spirit body's mind to communicate with this body. In other words, the spirit body mind controls through the functioning of the cord, the silver cord that snaps when you die, controls the flow of information into your brain, and your brain's primary purpose in your physical body is actually to function as a controller of the body. That's its primary purpose. The mind, which belongs to the spirit body, refers a lot of intentional information to that brain. Right? So your mind is here. So you're thinking, this is where you're thinking, your thoughts go, and this is why when your physical body dies, you still remember all your thoughts. Because if your physical body died, can you see, if your mind was in that brain and that body died, can you see you'd lose all your thoughts as well, wouldn't you? Right? And in fact, I know philosophically a lot of people I know think that's what happens, but it's not. What happens is all of your thoughts are still stored in your mind. And also you have sensory experiences, and they're not even stored in your mind, they're stored in your half of the soul. So there's a whole heap of things which you could call the mind of the soul, which is different to the mind of the spirit body, which is different to the brain of the physical body. Make sense? So, where things get stored or how you view consciousness is going to be based upon where you are dominant. So if the mind of your spirit body is dominant, right, and you think that all of your thoughts and all of your intentions and all of your feelings and all happen there, which a lot of people and spirits do think that is true. Can you see? The soul remains unconscious. So if we define consciousness as the soul being conscious of its surrounding, conscious of its abilities and experiences, its attributes and its characteristics, almost everybody who lives on earth is unconscious without that consciousness. They don't grasp where the soul, how they can exist in their soul. Does that make sense? So for most people, almost everything they think and everything they think they feel, because a lot of times they think they feel rather than feel, right, happens in the mind of the spirit body, right? In that state, from God's perspective, you are unconscious. Yeah. In the Paget messages, we refer to it as having a dead soul. Do you see what I mean? Because the soul's, the functionality, the characteristics and attributes of the soul are so shriveled up, it's like you're living life without a soul. So people who become very intellectually dominant on earth, when they arrive in the spirit world and they start recognizing that they don't know how to have a feeling, they then realize and they start to believe that they don't have a soul, because their soul is so shriveled up with its attributes and its characteristics and the knowledge of using it that they don't know how to use it. So from God's perspective, the mind that is conscious is really the soul's consciousness. From many of your perspectives, you think you're conscious when actually you're living in the mind of your spirit body, and that is not consciousness. Right? That's intellect, and there's a difference between intellect and consciousness. Now, in the Paget messages, we refer to this dichotomy where you have a person who's very much in their intellect, but in their soul, it's like they don't even know what their soul means, and they can't feel themselves. They can't feel how they really feel. And many of you, when we first met you, were the same, right? Where you didn't really know, you weren't even conscious of what you felt. Right? It's only after developing over time that you start developing some of the attributes of your soul, that you start understanding what you feel. Now, this is very, very important to understand from the aspect of praying, because prayer doesn't come from your mind and your spirit body. Prayer comes from the mind of the soul. It comes from your soul. Right? So unless you understand what a prayer feels like, you're not going to understand how to pray. Right? You're going to use techniques that are intellectual in their nature, trying to pray, but nothing will happen because God's soul responds to your soul's consciousness with regard to prayer, not to your mind. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Did that answer your question? It brings up a lot of other questions now, doesn't it? Yeah. This is the beautiful thing about truth, isn't it? That you ask one question, you get an answer, you go, wow, now there's 2,000 other questions now that I want to ask. But you can see from a perspective of way of discussion, what we're going to have to learn how to focus on is what is our soul. Can you see that? What does it mean that I feel versus I think versus I have an intellectual brain that can, not just a brain, but a mind behind the brain that can determine what to do and think things. What's the difference between how that feels to use my mind versus how it feels to use my soul's mind? What is the difference between those two states? And this is something we need to come to terms with if we want to pray. We need to come to understand what does prayer achieve and where does it happen? You know, for a prayer, for God's love to happen, it has to happen from our soul, not from our mind. So now we've got to understand the difference between our mind and our soul. Well, what's the difference?
Yeah, because I've had some experiences maybe 10, 15 years ago where I wasn't praying, or say.
Or you didn't think you were praying?
No.
Yes.
I had longings and I had deep emotionals, but
yes.
I wasn't praying to get them.
That's right. So there are many times, you'll remember in your own history, even many of you, that you've had times when you didn't think you were praying and you didn't think you were thinking of longings, but in your soul you had them. And many of us are very unconscious or unaware of the true longings of our soul versus the intellect and what's happening in our brain.
This is it's really funny to reflect on these things because we're so intellectually and mind dominant, the majority of people living on earth are, that we even say, even in your words, you said, I was having longings, but I wasn't praying. Because my mind says I didn't say pray, but your soul actually
was praying.
And this is...
And in fact, having longings is the definition, God's definition of prayer.
So this is where what Jesus was saying about when we come to feel what prayer is, as opposed to having an intellectual concept of prayer. This is a very important part of our progression, when we come to feel what prayer is, rather than think I need to pray or think I'm going to pray. So
yeah,
we can talk more about that as we go on.
Thank you.
Yeah. You want to say?
I just thought it would be nice to define what prayer is at this point.
Well,
are you ready?
I want to focus a little bit more upon this idea or concept of the separation of the person into its constituent parts. What I generally find talking to people is that most people are listening to what we're talking about in their mind. So they're very analytical, you know, and you've probably done that right from the beginning. You heard Divine Truth, right, where you listen to a few videos and you're going, oh, but he said that here, and what about that, and maybe there's contradiction here. But all this is going on in your mind, where you're analysing and determining and working it out and trying to determine what's being said and trying to determine how you understand that in your mind. Right? All of that, while necessary when you begin to listen to God's truth, all of that doesn't mean you're going to apply that from your soul. It just means that you've heard it and you've processed it in your mind. And your mind is not the conscious part of you. And the problem for many humans is we all think it is the conscious part of us. We've been taught that it is, right from our young age. You think about a university such as the one we're at here. People come here to develop their mind. So they develop in a course. Let's say you choose a course like engineering. You develop it using your mind. You're educated in your mind. All the way through your childhood you were educated through your mind. In fact, whenever you became emotional, what happened? The majority of people who were educating you stopped educating you and said, you need to deal with that emotionally so we can talk to your mind again. Right? So all of us have been educated in our mind. This is the way this earth has been designed at the moment, not by God, but by humans, to have education with your mind. Jesus comes along and has a chat with you. He's trying to educate your soul, which is different than educating your mind. Most of you have no trust of your soul at all, your own soul. You don't trust it at all. You don't trust your own feelings at all. You don't trust your own emotions that come from those feelings and thoughts at all. You don't understand your beliefs at all and how they influence your soul. No understanding at all. Most of us start at that place because we've been educated away from that all through our life. So here I am, I'm trying to present soul-based truths to an audience who begins by not having their soul connected to their mind. So what do? Can you see, we have to do something with the mind to get it out of the way, don't we? We have to, and part of that is allaying its fears. So a lot of sharing of divine truth on earth, unfortunately for me so far, has been allaying your fears. Getting rid of why you want to use your mind all the time. And the average person then goes, he's just now focused on, controlling us using some kind of emotional control or whatever. I go, no, your true self is your soul. Your emotions, your feelings, your passions, your desires, your longings. These are attributes of your soul. You need to understand personally how to use them. I don't want to control them. I want to help you understand how to use them. Right? This is what God wants for you. Your true loving self is in your soul. It's not in your mind. Right? Your mind can express certain things that your soul feels, but the actual feelings exist in your soul and not in your mind. It's very important to understand the difference between that. And it's very hard to explain it unless a person has some experiences in their soul that then they realise they weren't thinking about them, but they had them. And then you start to understand, there's this aspect of myself which I've been fundamentally ignoring in my education, which is my real self, my soul. But I'm fundamentally ignoring it because I've been taught to ignore it. Right? Now, the beautiful thing about prayer, which we'll define in a minute, is that it causes you to open up your soul. In other words, to open up the faculties of your soul. So not only do you have the benefit of receiving God's love, but you also get the benefit of opening up the way you feel, changing the way you feel, not the way you think. The way you think will change over time afterwards. It's the way you feel that needs to change. if we look at all of our problems that we face here on earth, all of them relate to love, and love is the way we feel. So every war that's ever occurred is because of how people feel. Every bad relationship you've ever had is because of how you feel. Every thing that you can do, even your eating, is about how you feel. Isn't it, really? Like, we could just eat one thing, like something that has all the vitamins and minerals in it, I don't know. Is there any plant that has that design? No. The reason why is because God wants us to have variety, but humans someday in the future will come up with a manufactured food, they will, that they say will have every trace element, every mineral, everything you need to survive, and you can just eat that. And then they'll put you on a spaceship and say, that's what you're eating for the next 20 years while you get to Mars, or whatever. 3 years while you get to Mars. By the time you got there, you're going to be absolutely sick of it. As any astronaut will tell you, they're very sick of what they eat. So there you go. We've been designed to experience variety, but functionally, as we could construct something ourselves that has all the things that are necessary for life, right? But we won't feel very good about it. We won't enjoy it. Because the real joy of eating is how you feel. The taste mixed with the feelings, mixed with the pleasures of who you have company with, and so forth. That's the real joy. And after a while, you start realising how much we have detuned from all that. Detuned from our soul, purposefully. Many of us have done it because we've been taught to, but many of us have also done it because our soul got hurt at some point in our past. And instead of dealing with that hurt, we wish to compartmentalise that hurt away from our conscious mind. And in doing that, we became unconscious from God's perspective, because our soul is where the consciousness exists. Yeah. Very important to understand that using your mind is not the way to pray. So then, we're going to talk later today what prayer isn't. Because I think it's very important to understand what it isn't. But I think now what we need to do is say what it is, right? And it's really simple. The Paget messages say it all the time. Prayer is sincere longing. That's all it is. Sincere longing. So if we say pray for God's love, we're saying have a sincere longing for God's love. That's all we're saying. So the whole concept of prayer is all about sincere longing. So I suppose the next question becomes, well, what is sincere and what is longing? Doesn't it? If we've broken it down into those two things, what is sincere and what is longing? What does sincere mean and what does longing feel like? What does sincere feel like? We need to probably talk about that, don't we? Can you see that? Okay. So you tell me what sincere is. I'll write down. We'll focus on sincere first. Yeah, that's probably emotionally naked. Naked, but when we say naked, we really. Oops. Let's use a mic. Sure.
Emotional, honest, being towards yourself and others.
So yes, honest.
Very much so. In every situation.
Yeah. So when we say we're honest, we're emotionally honest. So there's emotion involved in our honesty. You know, we feel the honesty. What's the opposite to that? Fake. What else? can't hear very well, so I'm going to need the mic.
Yeah, you're going to have to speak louder or use the mic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This auditorium suppresses all of the sound. So.
Yes, it's quite.
So, yes?
Without sin?
No, with the mic.
Yeah.
Without sin?
Sorry, without sin?
Yeah.
No. You can have sin and still be honest. Yep. Franz?
So there came up two aspects. Like one is
Closer with the mic and
yeah,
louder.
one is accepting what is. So even if I'm in a denial and while I'm accepting it, oh, something can change. And what then happens is that I get into the experience with more of my whole being.
All right, so what are you saying sincerity is?
Like a synchronicity of my experience or being on different levels.
So it's your
Including
emotion
myself.
agreeing with your intellect.
Yeah, or actually I would say it's even the soul having the experience, and later on it might hit the intellect. Sometimes I'm experiencing something like that.
Yeah, but now you're getting quite technical, but we just need the definition of sincerity. What is it?
Feeling it from my heart.
Okay, heartfelt, yes, is a...
And you also mentioned some other things there about acceptance. So it's a lack of resistance to the state of yourself, an allowance and an acceptance.
Yeah. So sincere is accepting reality, could you say? Like,
Or starting to open up to reality. Even that is kind of, I find, rewarded.
yeah. So accepting what is real. Or you could
Seeking
say...
what is real.
Or you could say accepting the truth, couldn't you? About how you feel, rather than just trying to create a facade about how you feel. This is the truth of how I feel. Now I'm being sincere. So if I'm angry and I'm making out I'm not, and behind I'm angry, can you see I'm creating a facade? That wouldn't be sincere, would it? But if I'm angry and I'm being angry, and I'm angry, now I'm sincere. At least I'm angry. I'm not sincere about my sadness, because obviously the sadness is driving the rage. But I am at least sincere about that I'm angry. I'm not in denial that I am. Right? So you can see there's degrees in sincerity, isn't there? How far you go with it.
Absolutely.
So an example is, I could go, well, I feel angry, so I'm going to be angry, right? And that's sincere. Well, it's not really sincere to the degree God requires, because anger is what is over the top of your fear and your sadness. So unless you're feeling some fear and sadness, and fear, by the way, isn't sincere either, right? Because fear is false beliefs being expressed.
And that's what I refer to as well on the different levels. So it's more sincere to connect to the hurt self layer than totally denying it. And it's even more sincere to connect to the truth self while perhaps feeling still some of the...
Yeah, I sort of have a different view than you there. I don't sort of see sincerity as graduation. I sort of feel you are sincere or you aren't.
Okay.
So if I'm angry, I might be being sincere about my rage, but I'm still not sincere. From God's perspective, I'm not sincere. If I was sincere, I'd be feeling my sadness. Then I'd be sincere. But sometimes even your sadness, feeling that's not sincere. So example is, you don't get what you want, so you're sad. Well, that's not sincere. There's a different, you can see, just because you're feeling something, it doesn't mean you're sincere. The feeling has to be in harmony with truth to be sincere. God measures the sincerity and that harmony with honesty and truth. Not yours, God's. God's truth. So you might feel sad and you think you're being sincere, but God's going, you're not sincere yet. Right? You're not sincere because the thing you're sad about, you don't even have to be sad about. Or it's not even real. You're just making it up. Right? So God measures that, whether it's in harmony with His truth. Make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I wouldn't say that there's graduations of sincerity. You are sincere or you're not. And for God's measurement, remember, it's God measuring this, not me. Like I'm just telling you the truth, that God created a system where you can pray, and God's definition of prayer is sincere longing. This is not mine, by the way. This is God's definition of prayer. Sincere longing is God's definition of prayer, and I'm just trying to help you connect with what that means. Make sense? But it certainly isn't a graduation to it. There's no gradient to it. You are either sincere or you're not. If you're sincere, you will be answered. If you are not, you won't. Simple as that. It's not like, just a little bit sincere. Doesn't work like that. You're either sincere or you're not. Make sense? I know many of you would like to believe that you can be a little bit sincere. And people who want to believe that generally want to believe that because they don't want to be all sincere for whatever reason. But yeah, it's not true from God's perspective. You're either sincere or you're not. In the moment, you know what I mean. You're either sincere or not. Yep. Yep. Okay, next paper.
If we go behind you to Brian. And across to Dylan.
So straight behind the front.
Perseverance.
Perseverance. Oh, why is that sincere?
Because it's not sincere if you only do it once.
Well, I can see what you're trying to say, but to me, perseverance can also, you can persevere in something that's completely insincere, can't you? So I don't know, like I can persevere with persecuting you, can't I? Which would be very insincere on my part. So, perseverance doesn't guarantee sincerity. You could say a person who has some sincerity wants to do it again and again and again, but what would you call that in a more defining manner? You could say they have passion, couldn't you? Yeah. So, and if you think about the word longing, the word passion sort of connects to that word, doesn't it? So let's just write that word down, and that's connected to the longing part. But in terms of perseverance, well, sometimes you need to stop doing what you're doing in order to receive God's love, not persevere with it. So an example of that is if you persevere with your sin, it's going to be very hard to receive God's love. Okay, so any other words you can think of?
If we come across to dinners, and then if we come at the back here after.
Okay, I was going to say it has to be like motivated. Is that like passion?
Okay, yeah, motivated is probably a good word in the sense that, and this is probably the word Brian was sort of aiming for a bit, wasn't it, with perseverance, more motivation, right? Which really is connected to the idea of desire, isn't it? So motivation, right? Which really probably belongs more with the word longing than with the word sincere, doesn't it? Anybody else? We're trying to get the word sincere.
Just
well, you mentioned truth and you talked about the facade, so it comes hand in hand. But I was thinking about authenticity.
Authenticity.
Authenticity, very good word. Authentic.
You've got to be real about it, don't you? You can't sort of.
Real. Yeah, very good word.
And for the longing, I was thinking about faith. Like you need to believe God exists.
Yeah, well, that's a lot about passion and desire, isn't it? Faith. So that belongs in that column, doesn't it? Longing column.
Yeah.
I might just put the word longing over a bit so we can see. Yeah. Good.
Go to Pierre, and then just keep passing along to Olga.
Emotionally open, like humble, would that be?
Yes, well, I suppose you could say hunger.
Humble.
Humble.
Sorry, humble.
Humility.
Humble.
Like to be emotionally open.
Depends how you define humble, doesn't it? Like a lot of people define humble as lowly, and that wouldn't be the word we would use here. So I've defined the word humble as being passionately desirous of all of your feelings. But you could say another alternative to that is being authentic with your feelings. And so I would define authentic feelings as being humble. Does that make sense?
And it's really feeling what I really feel and not what I want to believe I feel.
Of course. Yeah, I understand where you're headed with it. Yeah, and that gets down to, do I want to use my mind to think I want to go there, or is it something that I just really need to go towards and it's already there? You know? Yep. Can we... Any
So
more?
if we pass along to Olga. then?
Olga? Same?
Same.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
We come down to Ivan and then Tim.
And Tim. Over here. Tim's first.
Integrity.
Integrity. Very good word.
It's a good word. What does it mean?
Well, your longing needs to have, you need to have integrity in your longing.
It's an interesting word to try to define.
It is.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with you. But
Yeah.
I'm just trying to help other people with maybe English is not their first language.
Yeah, it's a solid foundation behind it. You stand behind what you want.
Yes,
Yes.
It's a feeling that you back it up with all of your feelings, isn't it?
Yes.
When you have integrity.
There's no part of you that's separate from that feeling. It's all of you.
Yeah.
Now, hang over here.
How is sincerity connected to consciousness, level on which I'm conscious of something? Because I can be sincere only on level which I'm aware of something.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Is it connected or is completely disconnected?
It's very connected, yes, because remember, God's measuring your sincerity based on what's in your soul, not what's in your mind. So you can be conscious in your mind of a thing and yet be completely insincere about it at the soul. An example of that, many of the men we meet are conscious of the fact they don't treat women well. Like, in other words, in their mind they know that they don't treat women well. But in their soul they want to keep treating women badly. So in their mind's going, I know I don't treat them well, I've got to try harder to not treat them so badly. But in their heart, their true feelings, their sincere feelings are, I want to treat them badly.
So they're not really conscious of it.
Correct.
Of the treatment.
Well, they're obviously aware in their mind, but they are not sincere yet about what's in their soul. Because if they could feel what was in their soul, they'd feel like, no, I know it's bad, but I want to do it. Do you understand the difference?
So from God's definition, no, not conscious.
Yeah.
But there is a process
Of awareness.
in this limited physical state of gaining awareness.
Yep.
So there's some intellectual awareness, which is potentially, if the person is sincere, going to help them to become more conscious, like truly conscious, but they're not, if they are denying it in their soul, in their feelings, they're not sincere on that issue and they're not conscious.
So a sincere person would say, okay, I'm doing the treatment like this and that, and I'm sincere with it. I know I'm doing this or that.
Well, even there it's interesting because from God's perspective, sincerity is I feel I am doing that, not I know I'm doing that. It's sort of like, at the moment you treat women badly. So I'll bring it to you. Like, at the moment you treat women badly. You think you don't. Right? In your mind you're thinking, no, I'm a good guy. I do good. Right? But in the feeling, there's some very strong feelings in you about how you would like to treat women. You want to dominate them, you want to control them, you want to keep them under a level of control. You have sexual purposes that you want to use a woman for. These are your true feelings, but in your mind you're unaware of that. So you're right. You need to have firstly some level of awareness, at least in your mind, that something's happening. And if you don't have that, then how are you ever going to be sincere in your soul if you can't be sincere even in your own mind? Right? That is true. But sincerity in your mind, from God's perspective, is not sincerity of the soul. So you can be sincere. So this is something that we've done with experimental with guys in Australia. We've talked to them about their treatment of women. In their mind, they now realise, because of the evidence that we've presented based upon their life, they've now realised that, yes, I can see that is treating women badly, here in their mind. But they still do it. The very next day they go and do the same thing. And the reason why the very next day they go and do the same thing is that the level of consciousness in their mind is not God's consciousness. God's consciousness is, no, you've got to be aware you do it in your soul.
So basically, you feel the damage you are doing. So you sort of...
And also the desires you have. Yes, Tejo. Yes, the desires you have to do it. And you're honest with that. Sincerity is being honest about that. Not just... see, what most people do is they create an illusion in their own mind so they do not have to admit things to themselves emotionally. So in other words, the average man has created this illusion that he treats women nicely, when the average man does not treat women nicely. He treats women badly. So in his mind, he's created the illusion because he wants to believe it.
So what is the process of changing that? What is the process of, so intellectually we see that, then?
Just hold the mic closer.
Intellectually we see that. So
Yeah.
what's the process of changing that? So we see intellectually, understand that that's the thing that's happening, and then what?
Well, firstly, it's very important to understand that seeing it intellectually doesn't help you very much. It's and in fact, it can create an illusion that you're dealing with it when you're not. Right? So firstly, we've got to be humble enough to see that just because I can intellectually acknowledge something to myself, it doesn't mean I'm humble, and it doesn't mean I'm sincere, and it doesn't mean I really see it. Right? That's the very first thing that needs to occur. I need to open up my soul to what I'm doing. So remember I drew the soul versus the mind just before. I need to somehow allow my soul to feel what I'm doing rather than to allow my mind to think about what I'm doing. Right?
So the answer to that is there are certain beliefs that you have and certain desires that you have to not know.
And you've got to address
all
that.
you have to deal with. As soon as they're gone, you'll feel.
You'll feel.
So basically, to open myself towards feelings, that through time develop that kind of facade that is like that.
It's essentially breaking down your facade. Yeah.
Not developing it. You want
to address the feelings that developed facade like that over time.
Why the facade came about.
Yeah.
Yes.
You need to know why it came about, certainly.
Yes.
And in fact, if you think about sincerity, the word facade is the opposite of sincerity, isn't it? You can see that. Yep. The word facade means fake, doesn't it? Presenting a fake. You know, you could say the opposite in sincerity is hypocritical. And what that means is, like, if I'm presenting something to you but I'm acting differently, then I'm obviously a hypocrite. So the problem is many of us would like to believe we're one thing with our mind, but actually our day-to-day life proves that we're another thing.
And what really helps us jump that gap, because in reality we are what we are from the soul. So like even the prayer is the sincere longing, and it's the soul thing, it's the soul's mind.
Yeah.
But we are not in the soul mind. But we're supposed to do the prayer while we're not in the soul mind. We're supposed to do it from the soul mind. So it's like...
Well, this is the beauty of prayer. See, this is where you're now feeling angry. So just calm down a bit. You're frustrated, right?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, and that's anger, right? So that's okay. I understand your frustration. And in fact, many persons we have this discussion with, particularly many men, get very frustrated about the whole concept, right? But firstly, whenever you have a degree of frustration, any explanation that comes at you is not going to be satisfactory, right? So this is something that a person needs to come to understand, is that while you feel so frustrated, you're also not going to accept the truth in that frustrated place. Frustration is a feeling. You need to learn how to feel it. At the moment, you're trying to use your intellect to overcome your frustration.
How do you feel frustration? Is it like just like you feel that anger?
You need to feel how angry you are that you don't get it. And why are you so angry that you don't get it? And if you start to feel about that, you'll see that actually the reason why you get angry when you don't get something is because you're in a competition with men about getting things, right? And this is something that's playing out in your life a lot, where you're in a competition with men about getting things. So when you don't get something, or something sounds difficult to understand for you, you then get frustrated. You call that frustration, but it really is anger. And you'd be better off going, I'm really angry because I don't get it, and I'm in a competition with my dad about getting it, right? And so you're going to have to feel a bit about the competition with your dad in order to even get this. Because this is not a competition. It's not a competition with another man to get something. What it's about is learning how to connect to your soul, right? And while you're in frustration, you are not connected to it. You are connected to your mind trying to grasp something, right? Now, every man that we ever discuss this with, almost, not every, but maybe 99.99% of them, like occasionally we meet a man who gets it right off the bat. My friend, the Apostle John, when I started to explain this to him in the first century, he got it sort of almost pretty much straight away. Every other man that listened to me in the first century other than him didn't. They became frustrated, like you feel now. And then they try to understand more with their mind, not understanding that in that place, I'm now just in the competition with Daddy trying to get something. That's why I'm angry. And you don't need to be angry about this. You need to breathe, calm down, and then we'll have a discussion and let yourself feel as you're having the discussion. You follow?
I'm trying to understand, like, to feel basically anger. That's definitely...
No, feel why you're angry. You don't feel your anger for a start. You call it frustration when it's anger, but you're not feeling why you're angry. You're angry because any time in your childhood when you didn't get something, you were punished for it. Any time in your childhood you were in a competition, your dad set up a competition with you. Any time you didn't get what he was saying, you got punished for it. Any time you didn't understand, you got punished for it. You're worried, you're afraid that you might get punished for not knowing. God's not like that. He's not going to do that with you.
And also,
He's not saying to Dijon, you don't get this, Dijon, so I'm not giving you my love. He's not going to do that to you. He's not going to punish you for not understanding. He desires you to understand, but you're not going to understand while you're in the competition with your father. You're going to have to work through that emotionally first. Right? This is why you're attracted to bodybuilding and fitness and all of these other things. These things are to prove yourself to Dad that you're better than what he thinks you are. Right? And this desire to prove oneself is the sincere emotion that you need to feel. And what you're trying to do is overcome it by asking a lot of questions of me without really hearing the answers, because you're already in a competition with what I'm saying anyway. Right? So you're not going to hear the answer. So it's sort of a difficult process, I know, if you're in this state, but remember, you're in this state because of what was constructed in your childhood. You know, God has compassion for that. God's not going to go, naughty boy, because you don't get it, and He's not going to punish you because you don't yet get it either. He's not going to try to make your life hard because you don't get it yet either. What He's going to try to do is help you understand, but the very first thing He wants to help you understand is you're going to have to get rid of some of this competition with Dad, which is what I've been calling it. It's really like Dad setting up a situation with Dejan where Dad is basically saying, unless you do it my way and you understand my way, you're no good as a man. That's not what God's saying. He's just saying, God's saying, there is one way to receive my love. It's the way I created to receive my love, and the way is prayer, which is sincere longing. And God has a definition of sincere, and God has a definition of longing. And that's what we've got to come to learn, what that definition of sincere is and what the definition of longing is. So the key for you now is to go, okay, is to, rather than getting all worried and pet up, the key is to go, okay, let's look at these words here, right? And you are dead right in saying that your perception is going to play a part, isn't it? Like, you can be sort of like thinking you're honest in your mind, while at the same time be completely dishonest in your feelings. You can be that. And you've been taught to be that by your father, actually. Right? So it's going to be harder for you to enter sincerity than it might be for another man who's been like not where Dad hasn't set up a competition. So for him, he's going to find it easier to be sincere, perhaps, because Dad encouraged sincerity rather than encourage fake. Right? Your dad encouraged fake. Meet my demands and meet my, needs, and then I'll approve of you, is what your dad fundamentally feels. And even then, you never got much approval, right? Another man might have got completely opposite, where Dad said, just be yourself, son, If you like music, you like art, you like, got all these emotions, feel those. And if this other man then is presented with the word sincerity, he won't have as much strife with it, because he hasn't been encouraged to create fake. Do you understand what I'm saying, Dejan?
Yes. Just as I see it, I see myself as being sincere. Everything I do, and like the paths I take it as I see it, as it should take, not like some
I know you do. I know you do. But I'm saying to you, you're not. Right? You've become so addicted to the illusion that you don't understand the actual reality. And this is something, in dealing with you, pretty much every person around you feels. Right? I know you think you're being sincere, right? But you're not having God's definition of sincerity yet. I know you think you have it. And this is what I'm saying, is that it's going to have to be God's definition, not Dejan's definition. And your definition is based upon what's happened to you. And and I'm trying to describe for your sake, and also for many other men in this room's sake, because many of them have the same problem of what's stopping them from being sincere. And a lot of times it's an addiction to a image, which you now have. You're addicted to an image. And that image and the addiction to it was created by your desire to impress your father. And so many of the things you think you're sincere about, you're actually not sincere about yet. From God's perspective. You follow? From Dejan's perspective, he's sincere. This is something that he's going to have to get used to, and this is something that's going to have to change for it to be measured as sincerity by God.
So my perception of sincerity is intellectual.
Yep.
Without emotions backing it.
No, it's driven by some rage and other emotions associated with getting approval from your father. So it's not actually driven from your heart, it's driven by a desire to impress, which is different, and even just to impress yourself. You know, like you can get addicted to just impressing yourself. A lot of people who enter the kind of lifestyle you've had in the past, the fitness regimes you have as well, are all about impressing yourself, how far you can go, how good you are, right? And you can become so addicted to that because of really fundamentally not understanding that it's about impressing dad, right, which is a childhood thing. You can become so addicted to that now anytime you don't understand something, you straight away get frustrated with it because it's
actually panic.
Yeah, panic.
You're in a panic. Yeah.
You're in panic about potentially getting harmed by your father, to be honest.
Yeah.
And potentially getting harmed by God now, because that's sort of the feeling you have, that God's making it hard for you. This is why sometimes you get angry at God, right? Because you sort of feel like God's making it hard for you, and He's not, but it is something your Father would do. Make it hard for you. That's what He would do, for sure. But I don't want to go any further into that with you, but it's important for you to grasp, and many men here, it's also the reason why they think they're being sincere when they're not, right? It's because they think they're being sincere, they strive. You're a striver. You know what I mean by strive? Like, you try hard with everything you do. You push yourself to the limit with everything you do, right? When it comes particularly to your physical prowess, you push yourself. When it comes to your emotions, you're trying to use the same technique to access them, and it's not going to work. Right? It's the method you're being taught, but it's not going to work. Over the course of the day, through the definition, you will start to see why it's not going to work. If you're patient enough, you'll see. Yeah?
Yes, thank you.
And we're next.
Go to Nikki and then to Talia.
Yes, about the definition.
Just if everyone can hold it on their chin.
Yeah. The definition of sincere, then you mentioned it. It's also then being addiction free. It's free of addiction.
Yeah, well, the purpose of an addiction is to avoid sincerity. So, yes, it's the opposite of being... Having an addiction means you're not sincere. Very true.
It's something small, maybe not, but I feel that the heartfelt also should really be in the longing. But I just feel for me that longing is a very heartfelt. But I don't know.
True. Longing is a heartfelt thing, isn't it? Yep. Just wait for that. Okay, so longing is a heartfelt thing, but if you think of what we meant by heartfelt is what's in here is what I'm expressing, which is a statement of sincerity, isn't it? Like, if what's in me is the exact thing that I'm expressing, then I'm sincere. But if what's in me is not what I'm saying or being, then I'm no longer sincere. Can you see that? So it relates to both issues, doesn't it, really?
Yeah, it's both, but I personally just feel that heartfelt is so longing that I want it there too, but it's just...
Yeah. But you know you can be very heartfelt in your sin, can't you?
And this is where people get quite confused a lot too.
Yeah.
The amount of people that I've spoken to said, I'm just longing for my soulmate. I'm longing for them. And there's a lot of heartfelt feeling, but it's not longing. It's not seeking them. It's addiction. It's demanding. It's
needing them.
A lot of us think longing and needy. We don't know that we can't tell the difference inside of us.
Yeah. So many of us, really, if we're honest, we would say longing is need. Right? Many of us, and in fact, the trouble with need is it creates demand.
Yeah, it's not love.
There's no love. So that's not, it's like demanding that God gives you love. Do you think God's going to listen? No. You know, many try that, of course. You know, yell at God, why aren't you giving me love? Well, they need to go through all that if that's what they need to go through, but at the end of the day, it's not sincere. Yeah. Need creates demands. Both things are not loving, and both things are also not longing. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, we go. Let's go across the ground.
Yep, and the back.
So one more I was going to add on the sincere is self-reflective.
Self-reflective?
Yes. Yep. The trouble with self-reflection, there is some problems with it. Can you tell me what the problems might be?
That they might not be sincere.
Well, can you see the problem with self-reflection is by definition it comes from self. So
maybe I can rephrase to be reflective from God's definition.
Yes, so it really what I need, isn't it, is God's opinion rather than my own. The trouble with self-reflection is that I can use self-reflection to reinforce my own opinion, or I can use self-reflection to ask myself what God's opinion might be. Now, if I'm using it to just get my own opinion, can you see that's not very sincere, because I'm just going to get reinforced of my beliefs. So if my belief is one thing and I'm going to be self-reflective, I go, yeah, I think I'm pretty good with that. So this is where many men are, as I was just illustrated as Dejan, where many men are with their relationship with women. They think they're self-reflective about it, but they think their demands on women are good. That's not God's opinion, but it is theirs. And they think they're being sincere. Right? They even think many times that their demands are actually good demands, that are righteous demands. So just be careful with self-reflection and self-righteousness.
Yes, it is with respect to what God's definition.
Yes.
And then under longing, could we also say...
Just a bit closer.
Could we also say having a healthy obsession?
I think by definition obsession is probably not healthy.
No, but like it's like when something is just really consuming you and you just...
Yeah, an all-consuming desire is a positive thing. Obviously, an obsession or a frenzy is not a positive thing, right? So many of you become frantic, thinking that it's actually sincerity, but it's not. It's driven by fear, so therefore, by definition, insincere. So for some of you, when you heard about God's love, you sort of become frantic about it. I need that. It's so important that I get it. I must have it. I've got to do it. He keeps reminding me, I've got to pray, so I'm going to pray. I'm going to be, I'm going to be good at it, and you become sort of this frantic person with it, but that is all fear-driven, so that's not sincerity. So yes, it's interesting what we do trying to convince ourselves of our sincerity. Nowadays we call it virtue signalling. So you could say sincerity is virtue in its real definition of the word, but is virtue signalling sincere? No. Now that's creating a facade that I'm doing one thing when really I may not feel the thing I'm doing. And the fact is that if I've got to tell you that I did it, and it's not in an educational format, then I'm signalling that I did it to you for some other insincere reason. Right? So virtue is a sincere emotion, but virtue signalling is insincere.
We were at the back, yeah.
Yeah, thank you really much for this brilliant moment. And as we are in a university, I want to say a word that is related to the physics field, that is superposition. That in this context, it means, for example, when you sleep, you are being good to your body. But when you accidentally burn yourself in hot water, you are being bad to your body. You don't need to be infinite good or either infinite bad, but you can be in a superposition when you are in an equilibrium with the bad and the good. And when you
can I stop you for a moment though?
Yes, yes.
You're now trying to teach something you believe.
Okay.
Yep. Now, I don't necessarily disagree with what you believe here, but I'm just saying how unloving it is to stand up and teach something what you believe when somebody else has created a forum to teach something different. So, can I have the microphone away from you? Thank you.
Sorry if I've said something wrong.
No, it's just the intention behind what you're doing is that you want everybody here to listen to you, but they didn't come here to listen to you.
No. If I can just finish my thought, I will just say...
No, you can't finish your thought.
Okay.
Sorry?
Okay.
No.
No worries.
And where are we at next?
Nobody, Tim.
Can we come down to Tim? Thank you.
And then Charlotte.
It's kind of broadly covered within the words you've used, but you actually mean it with every fibre of your being. Like I think, for sincerity.
Yep, that's spot on.
You actually mean it, yeah.
You actually mean it.
You actually mean it, yeah.
Yeah. So you could say, I mean it. Yeah, it's real. But of course, again, it depends a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because you can see you might mean it, but from God's perspective, you're still wrong.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so you could mean that, yes, I feel like I'm being sincere right at this moment because I really feel that Simone should do what I wanted to do in this situation.
Sure,
you know?
yeah.
And I really feel that I'm right on this thing,
Yeah.
right? But unless you get a third...
Because it's through your injured self, yeah.
Yeah, unless you get God's opinion, can you see you may be wrong?
Just meaning it might not be enough, okay.
Just meaning it doesn't necessarily, from God's perspective, mean that you're sincere.
Mm.
You feel that?
Depends what you mean, doesn't it?
Yeah.
When you mean it. But I agree, sincerity is a full being feeling.
I agree,
yeah. So you're not wrong.
But just because you have a full being feeling, it doesn't mean that feeling is sincere. So be careful with a lot of these definitions. Just because you have one of them, it doesn't mean you are sincere from God's measurement of it.
It's got to be truth.
It's got to be truth involved in it. It's got to be love involved in it. There's got to be God's view of the matter. Yep.
Thanks.
With longing, it may be an openness to receive.
Well, that's what it creates. That's its result.
How do we create openness? It's like we have to seek something, don't we? I think seeking for me is a big part of longing. So it's like when you seek, it creates openness, doesn't it? But openness is not necessarily part of longing. It's the result of longing. Yeah. Yep, just behind you there.
I was thinking of absorbed in love.
Yeah, remember we're longing for love here. And to long for something that you think you're already absorbed in means that you're probably not going to long for it.
Right, I was referring to sincere.
Yep, I understand what you're saying, but what I'm trying to say to you is unless you feel that what you're longing for is beyond your current position, can you see you're probably not going to long? So I would say many people who hear New Age terminology in particular believe themselves already to be absorbed in love. They believe themselves to be already at one with God. Remember I said earlier that God is a different entity to us. It's very important to understand that we are very limited in comparison to God. So there is never a time where you, unless you're at one with God, are absorbed in love, ever. You can be overpowered by it, but you won't be absorbed in it. To be absorbed in it, you would need to be at one with God already. Do you follow the difference? So I know I'm being a bit pedantic with the definition, but it's very important to understand that you're not coming to God from the position that you're already a loving guy. You're coming to God with the position that you want more of God's love, desire more of God's love, because you want to become a more loving guy.
And this, I feel this is very important because we've used lots of feeling, like lots of words like heartfelt and honest, but the reality is we can be in the depths of hell in our soul condition and have a sincere longing. Yep. This is a very important point because most of us start there. Most of us start from a condition of really a lot of sin within us, and all we need to start this process, and there's actually a lovely message from John that I put up on the blog last night that talks about the fact that as long as we long for God's love and receive it, we automatically begin to grow in our natural love and our love for others and our capacity to love and to understand love. But we don't need it first. We don't need it in order to commence the sincere longing, which is very beautiful on God's part if you think about it, that we don't have to already be in a state of love to receive love.
And in fact, the majority of people who receive love at the beginning are not in a state of love at all. Like they're not absorbed by love at all.
How do you mean that exactly?
Well, they desire to be more loving than they are, but they know they're not. Like a part of being sincere is knowing where you currently stand. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
And a lot of God's laws and a lot of the operation of the universe that God's designed for us is to bring us to that point of reality, of to see where I'm at. When I'm not already sincere, it helps me to develop the sincerity to say, oh, maybe there's more for me to see here. The laws are showing us all the time, actually, where am I really at? Where am I really at? And when we become sincere about wanting to know where we're really at, wow, now we get a lot of truth and we can receive a lot of love quickly. But this idea that we have to be a good little boy or girl in order to get daddy or
and we have to be
love
all loving already
is really common on earth, and it's really important that we get rid of that idea when it comes to really relating to God. Yeah. It's not a matter of being perfect or, this is why a lot of prayers become very facade-like, very rote-like on earth, because everyone thinks, how I must be certainly pure in order for God to love me, when actually God just wants you to desire to be pure, to desire to love, and understand where you're coming from to love you, to give you love. Yeah.
So the answer is no, you don't have to be absorbed in love at all. And in fact, that's not a mark of sincerity. A mark of sincerity is knowing where you are right now. Like, what is your true condition right now? That's a mark of sincerity. And the true condition is not just your condition in terms of your feelings. It's also your condition in terms of your beliefs. So it's not just involving your feelings. It involves your beliefs and your attitudes as well, your motivations, as well as your feelings. So it's very important, a person who's sincere sees their false beliefs. They see their attitudes that are out of harmony with love. They see them, and they don't try to falsify them to God. They present them as they are, right? Exactly as they are to God. Not trying to create a fake love or a fake loving place, but rather just to be real with the place they're in.
Thank you very much.
Good day. What's the time?
Yeah, it's 1:30.
Okay, well, we might have to stop for lunch, eh? Many of you probably also need to go to the toilet as well, right? So what we want to do after the break is we want to continue this discussion now, but we also want to talk about the antonyms to this. So, because it's important to sort of see the things that you don't do versus the things you do. Do you know what I mean? Or do feel. And very important also to see what humans have done with this. Like when they hear about prayer, what they've then done to prayer. You know, humans have tainted the concept of prayer so much that most of us, when we think of the word prayer, it's very distasteful to us, right? And so, yeah, there's all sorts of problems we have with the word. And so we want to make sure that we can also dispel some of those problems and issues with the word prayer. Does that make sense? Okay, well, let's have our break.
See you back here at 2.
See you back here at 2.